So how long you been sober?
63 days.
Wow. That's the steepest bit you've done.
So what about you?
Oh boy. 12 years, 4 months, and 29 days.
I don't know. How is that?
And it's okay. Started off one day at a time. 12 years and 4 months later, it's still one day at a time. Because that's the only way. And it works. And you're doing it.
And that is a clip from The Outrun. I'm delighted to say I've been joined by stars Saoirse Ronan and Paapa Essiedu. Saoirse and Paapa, thank you very much for talking to us. How are you doing?
We're well.
Really good.
Introduce us to your characters. There are so many things to talk about with this film, which I enjoyed enormously. If you get a chance, you have to see it in the cinema. Obviously, there are screening options eventually, but see it in the cinema. You have to see it on a big screen. Saoirse and Paapa, introduce us to your film. Saoirse, do you want to go first?
Sure. So our movie is called The Outrun. I play Ronan, who is the central character who we follow over the course of about 8 or 9 years. She comes from the Orkney Islands. She moves down to London when she's in her early 20s. Dives right into the East London club scene, finds her circle of friends, falls in love with Paapa's character, Dayn. And then we gradually start to see her spiral. Her relationship with alcohol becomes more and more unhealthy. And in the process of that getting worse, she loses everything and everyone close to her and dear to her. We follow her then through her sort of rock bottom and her recovery that follows. And the second half of the movie is very much about the healing process and the kind of life that comes after addiction.
Paapa, tell us about Dayn.
Yeah, so as Saoirse just said, Dayn is Rona and Dayn are together in the London part of the movie, which we flash back to incrementally during the film. And I think in this movie you see a whole lifespan of a relationship from the early giddy, energized, exploratory, turbocharged section of a relationship where everything is exciting, and the idea of going out and getting messed up and everything is just part of the furore of new love, and you see that develop into something that becomes more substantial, and then eventually you kind of see the downfall of the relationship where it feels like the two of them are battling to overcome this third party, which is Rona's addiction.
And how would you describe this? Again, this is a question for you, Paapa. How would you describe the relationship together? You've given us kind of like the bare bones, but what is it that you see in each other?
You know what I think is a really deeply felt relationship. It doesn't feel surface at all. It feels like a relationship, definitely in the genesis of it, which is based on something that feels kind of very elemental DNA deep between them. And even though they come from very different backgrounds and do different jobs, have different lifestyles, to something about each other that allows them to complete one another. But the relationship, I suppose, ends up being characterized by a fight to stay with each other, a fight to keep hold of each other, a fight to continue being in contact with each other, and that's what we wanted to focus on, that fight, that effort to stay together.
Saoirse, you're a producer on the movie with your other half, Jack Loudon, and I think it was he who suggested, I think the story starts in COVID and lockdown, and he hands you the book. Is that where this began?
Yes, it is for Jack and I. He had visited the Orkney Islands a few years before, and since then he had The Outrun on his bookshelf. He finally read it in lockdown, and as soon as he finished it, he handed it to me and he said, I think this is the next role that you have to play, not just as an actor, but as a person, because he is aware of my own relationship as a sort of bystander, a person who has watched a loved one go through this particular experience or a form of it. And he knew that it was something, you know, as someone who's very close to me, that I would need to do at some point. And it felt like the right time. And I think it wasn't a coincidence that during the pandemic, it was such a, you know, it was a completely surreal time, but it was also quite helpful, I think, to re-examine what was important to you and who you wanted in your life and how you wanted to spend your time. And I think ultimately that's what the Outrun is about. It's sort of re-evaluating what life means to you and actually what can give you a natural high without having to turn to a substance.